I'm Laura Broxson, and I'm from the National Animal Rights Association, and I'm here with my good friend and activist Evelyn Suttle, who a lot of you may know as being one of the vegans. So hi Evelyn, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Laura?
I'm good. So what I'd like to ask you first is, what began your journey into veganism and activism, and which came first? Were you involved in activism before vegan, or were you vegan before activist?
Definitely, I was vegan before I was active in animal rights. And I don't know, it took a long time for things to click with me. I just, throughout school, I was there thinking, I'm too cool for anything, but I didn't eat animals. And I do remember like that turning point in my life, because it was just when I was starting secondary school. And looking back, and this is retrospectively, I didn't really realize at the time, that's when my first pet had died. And I think the idea that I was, grieving over one animal, but eating others on a regular basis, just it didn't sit right, and it still doesn't sit right. So stopped eating meat, and eventually, it's a gradual thing, learning how animals are used and exploited. So eventually learned, oh wait, also gelatin is meat, and eventually learning, oh wait, shoes use glue that's been tested on animals, and cosmetics are tested on animals. And eventually I went vegan 7 years ago, and it was when I became vegan that I started uncovering a whole wealth of horrifying animal exploitation I hadn't known about before. And just through like Facebook and just recipe groups, things like that, you just kind of stumbled upon it. And I can't remember the first protest I went to. I definitely, I signed petitions when I was young enough against fur and things that were obviously cruel to me. But I think it was only after I left college that just the world was not right with me and I wanted to do something about it. So slowly got into protesting. And now I try to actively protest as much as possible. We're in a little bit of a standstill this year, but still trying to push forward the movement.
Yeah, I mean, like what's happening at the moment can't be helped. But I think like your journey, like a lot of vegans' journeys, it starts from one thing and then it just grows and grows. And every year you kind of get better, learn something new, or get involved in something else. And in terms of your activism and campaigns you're involved with, I know that like myself, you're involved in a lot of different social justice campaigns and issues. For me, when I started campaigning, I was just primarily an animal rights activist, and then everything else I kind of became more aware of, and aware of the need to join and help out and things. But for yourself, did you start off with animal rights activism, or was it kind of human rights activism, or was it kind of together at the same time?
The first protest I ever went to was an Iraq war protest, which was obviously more focused on human rights and prioritizing oil over people. But I think animal rights was always the number one thing to me, just growing up. I think just as a child, I always loved animals more so than anything else I'd ever come across in my life. And I wrote, there was one thing we had to do when I think we were 11 years old. We had to say what we wanted to be when we grew up. And I said, I want to own a mini farm. And I did not know what that meant. I thought that a farm is a place where you get to hang out with animals and pet them on the head. And now I know that that is more of an animal sanctuary than it is an animal farm, that there's a lot more to it than just petting animals on the head. But that was always my priority. And through that, I discovered how much animal agriculture affects so many other things. It affects the rights of the people whose land it's taking. It affects the rights of the people who are being underpaid in that industry. It affects how hot the world is, and therefore affects every single one of us. So animal rights came first. And through that, I got to know a lot of other issues and have got involved in other issues. And I don't know, sometimes the whole thing feels like you're spreading yourself too thin. So I would like to learn more about everything that I'm involved in and try to get more active in every single thing I'm involved in. But I don't know, it's a step-by-step learning progress, the whole thing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like personally, I learn something new like every like couple of weeks on how to do better and be better, and either boycott something else to my huge boycott list or whatever. Like there's always something else. But I've noticed that you in particular, I would consider the expert on being vegan and zero waste. How did that start? How did you become aware of that?
Oh, I'm an expert on nothing. Don't be saying I'm an expert on, but zero waste. I would say that definitely when I tell someone, like if someone wants to like go for coffee with me, I'm like, oh yeah, I'll just have to make sure that they have plant milk, and I'll have to make sure that they'll take my keep cup, and I'll have to make sure they'll do this and this and this. And I want to make sure the workers are paid correctly, and I want to make sure that this coffee is fair trade, blah, 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 blah. I'm a mess of demands. The zero waste thing, which I'm definitely not an expert on. I am looking at a bunch of single-use plastic gloves I have over there to do with the current pandemic. But that came about in, I think around 2018 is when I put my foot down and I said, I am not going to rely on single-use plastic for my groceries. And it's really hard. It's really hard. Like there's alternatives to meat and dairy quite accessible across the country. But in terms of getting potatoes that aren't wrapped in plastic, it was a lot harder than I expected it to be. And I think that's the best thing about zero waste, is that when someone tries to give up single-use plastic, I think the purpose of doing that isn't that you're going to start a revolution by yourself. It's that you're going to realize the systems that are in place that make that difficult for everyone. You're going to realize that we are set up for failure when it comes to trying to avoid plastic. And that's the most important thing I've learned from trying to give up plastic, is that it's not the consumer's fault, and it's not on me, and it's not on you. It's on the fact that it's cheaper to fill a supermarket with plastic and goods that are imported from all around the world than it is to sell local vegetables at a corner. And that is a huge problem.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, it all comes back to capitalism, really. And, what you were saying kind of about the lack of awareness, and it's not on the individual. When it comes to sort of zero waste and the use of plastics and things, it kind of reminds me of when we're trying to get people to understand how important it is to be vegan. Sometimes people find it hard to make the connection when they're not seeing directly what goes on in slaughterhouses. And when it comes to plastic, you're not seeing, the capitalistic machine. You're not seeing the workers. You're not seeing the chemicals. You're not seeing the landfill sites. It's kind of the same thing. You're not really seeing the connection that has resulted in this end product. And for me, watching your stories on vegans, it teaches me something new every week about it, and you've made me more aware of how important it is to reduce your plastic use and to be more organic and as zero waste as possible. So I guess, for anyone who's vegan, who's interested in trying to be as zero waste as possible, what would you say are good first steps to take?
If you want to completely change your lifestyle to not be zero waste, well, I'd say the first thing is that one of my pet peeves is when I'm on a zero waste group and I find out people are like, oh, I brought my own reusable container to the butcher's to buy beef. I just want to very much clarify that the biggest individual thing you can do for your personal carbon footprint is giving up beef and dairy. So those are great first steps if this is about your personal environmental impact. But if you are wanting to find out more about how to give up plastic and how difficult or easy it might be, the first steps I would say is to reach out to the community, online if you can, or in person as well. There's so many groups, like Dublin Friends of the Earth have a Sick of Plastic group. They're trying to raise awareness about this, where it ends up, where it comes from, all that kind of stuff. And loads of documentaries as well. If you watch a documentary about plastic and where your rubbish is actually ending up. That will really sway you when you go to the supermarket, if you have the choice in front of you. Very often you don't have the choice in front of you in terms of plastic or not plastic. That's not even there. But if you ask the community, I was able to find out so many resources about local zero waste places. There's one just up the road from me that I wasn't even aware existed, Small Changes in Drumcondra. And then you have the Dublin Food Co-op, and you have Reusey, just things that they're small enough businesses. And obviously they don't have huge marketing campaigns. So it's not like Lidl or Aldi where they're going to have a huge billboard if they open in your local area. They might be there and you might not know about them. And then those resources might not be there for you at all. But still, it's a really good thing to find out that they're not there and find out why they're not there for you.
That's really good advice, and thank you. That would be very helpful for people. And this kind of like, it brings me back to what I was saying, that like I do learn a lot from the VCon's Insta stories like every week. So can you tell me a little bit more about like what made you start VCons, and were you surprised at how popular it got so fast?
Yes, I was surprised. And like there's three of us as well, and like Kate and Linda who run it as well. I always learn stuff off our stories as well. It seems weird that you're going on your own account and you're like, whoa, look at our story. Oh my God, Leo said what? Like, that's me going through the vegan story. So I really am glad that there's two other amazing Huns raising awareness about things that I am completely ignorant about. And it was Kate's idea to set up a vegan Instagram and Facebook because the three of us were vegan and we were having a swell time eating food every day and not protein deficient and not anything deficient, and getting to know more about how our diet affects animals and affects the planet and affects other people. And so she said, this is wonderful, let's set up an Instagram that shows that vegan food is available in Ireland. I think it was with the mindset that we knew there were pages about London and pages about LA, but there was loads of vegan food in Dublin and around Ireland, and we wanted people to be more aware of it. I did not for 1 second think that people were going to follow it. I thought people were going to occasionally stumble upon it and be like, oh, this is where I can get a pizza. But no, there's been loads of Huns. It's weird to say Huns because I know it means something different depending on where you're talking about and what time period you're referring to. But I think of a Hun as being someone you meet in a public bathroom and they'll check on you if you're crying. That's my definition of it. So a vegan being one of those wonderful women, but also they don't eat animals. And yeah, there's been a growing group of followers and they've taught us so much as well. Something I really love is when vegans post something and sometimes you get like hater comments, sometimes you get comments that are just very benign, but sometimes you get comments that are just trying to inform you that you can do better, trying to say, actually, did you know that this vegan ice cream is owned by this company who do this terrible thing and exploit these workers and do this thing? And I think that's great because it just tells us something new and makes us do better as well, because until you know that something's wrong, you can't really do anything about it. So that's why it's been great to get in contact with people online and find out all these things about veganism and animal rights and environmentalism and zero waste and human rights and feminism as well. They're a great bunch of lads, the followers.
Definitely, definitely. And what like I love about the vegans is that, you know, I follow a lot of vegan bloggers and Instagrammers and everything, and a lot of it I find would be more sort of food and recipe orientated, but what I love about vegans is that yes, it's about, you know, where to get that vegan pizza, but it's also about let's demand change in this country and let's stand up for animals, let's stand up for humans. So I love that the three of you decided not just to make it a diet blog, that it's also a political blog. And I know that, you know, the vegans were hugely involved in the repeal campaign, fur farming campaign, amongst many others. What was that kind of a conscious decision to make it political, or is it something that gradually happens?
There's definitely been conscious moments where we've decided we want to raise more awareness about certain campaigns, but I think overall it was inevitable. I think when the three of us get together and we're talking, we're going to end up talking about serious issues. I just feel like chit chat about nothing isn't worth anything. And just talking about pizza online, while it might be fun, it's not going to change the world. So I think it was quite a natural process that we started trying to address important issues, because we don't see veganism as a diet at all. And veganism isn't a diet. If you look it up, vegetarianism says that it's, you know, about not eating meat, but veganism says that you are avoiding animal products, whether that be in your diet and in your clothing. So it is about something beyond that. It's about how your choices affect lives outside of your own. And so, yeah, we all started gradually saying, well, we want to raise awareness about this campaign. And definitely for things like repeal, we decided, okay, we need more young people to register to vote. So we want to post about the repeal campaign at these dates and these dates, and we want to do this and this. But I do think it's been a natural process that we just can't shut our mouths, because the world isn't perfect, and we're going to keep complaining about that until the world is perfect, which it won't be. So we'll be shouting till we die.
I love it. That's great. It's absolutely fantastic. And, you know, for anyone who isn't aware of VCons, really check it out, because I watch the stories every day, and like I learn something new every day. So thank you so much for that. And in terms of like at the moment, I know that the country's under a bit of a lockdown. We're restricted in what we can do, while, you know, we've all been kind of stuck mostly at home and not being out there doing the usual things we do in terms of activism and stuff. Is there any advice you have about like activism from home at the moment?
Yeah, we're trying to, this is myself and Linda and Kate, we have been trying to raise awareness that staying at home, and a lot of us do need to stay at home, and myself and my partner are in at-risk groups, so we are staying home during the day, but that doesn't mean you have to be passive, and it definitely doesn't mean you have to be silent. I think today, for instance, I believe Linda right now is sending emails and putting her name's on petitions regarding the Black Lives Matter campaign and trying to end direct provision. And Kate, I believe, is in person socially distancing protesting right now. And for me, I went out at 3 in the morning, and I might have chalked the street a little bit about what I wanted to be said. And then I'm going to get on to a few campaigns that I'm working on from home today. That, because a lot of this is online, I always tell people that one of the most powerful things you can do is email your policymakers, because it makes life very easy for them, for you to not contact them, and therefore they think, oh, everything we've been doing so far must be grand because none of my constituents have said anything else. And actually, I remember a friend texted me because she said she wanted to look into giving up plastic, and I think she must have watched a documentary about climate change, and after you watch a documentary you're really like, I need to do something right now. So she texted me and she said, oh, I'm thinking of trying to reduce the meat I eat and reduce the plastic. What else do you suggest I do? And I said, well, definitely number one thing is that while you make personal choices, you also need to let this be known by your government, who are going to be making much bigger choices themselves on behalf of all of us. They represent you. So please email your TDs and tell them that this has become a priority for you and this is what you're going to be undertaking. And very sadly, she messaged me back and she said, oh, I think that's too much for me. And and
Oh,
I can understand that we've been made to be really afraid of people in power, but that is a really dangerous mindset. And when someone stands up against that, that's when change can really happen. So while you might be staying at home and you might have to stay indoors in order to protect yourself and protect your family and protect the people around you, you don't have to be silent. And that is the worst thing you can do if you are trying to change the world. So just email your TDs. Go to whoismytd.com. They'll give you all the different emails. You email them, you say, I'm angry about this that's going on. I'm angry about this. I'm angry about this. And I want something done about them today. Because we currently have a government like that is forming right now. We are in the cusp of change. And I think just yesterday they were talking about agriculture. So they need to know that me and Laura here really want agriculture to change drastically, because otherwise they're going to just give themselves a pat on the back and say, everything's fine, let's keep doing it just the same. And everything's not fine, and we can't keep doing things the same.
absolutely. That's wonderful, wonderful advice. And that kind of touches on something that before all of this happened, that we were kind of hoping to be working on and doing, setting up a sort of a template and a presentation on how to shift from animal agriculture to plant-based vegan agriculture. So this is something I was talking to you about a while ago that we were hoping to maybe set up in the summer. Now it's probably not looking like we'll be able to do that anytime soon, or maybe we can do an online version. But you know, as a vegan, as an activist, you know, I feel that this is possible for Ireland, and I feel that it's possible that it can happen within my lifetime. What do you think?
I would completely agree with you that not only it's possible, it has to happen. There's no other choice than to transition to plant-based agriculture. There's just very simply no other choice. If you look at how we treat people and how we're treating this country that we live in, this island of Ireland, I think it's about 62% of the land mass is used for meat and dairy production. And that is not sustainable in any way. It's not sustainable in terms of our ethics and how we treat animals. It's not sustainable in terms of the greenhouse gas emissions and the deforestation we're causing. It's not sustainable economically either. Like, we just, with one bovine disease, suddenly that entire industry will be gone. And we're seeing how it's affected by this pandemic. So I don't just see it as possible or probable, I see it as inevitable that we will have to change in the next 100 years. It's really just a matter of at what point, at what disaster are we going to wake up that has to happen. And I'm hoping that this disaster is going to make some huge changes, because we have, in the last few months, something that I really didn't think was going to happen in 2020 is we announced that loads of unsustainable, unnecessary and cruel things, we said that they were unnecessary. And we said, we're going to shut down this for a while. We're going to try to travel less. We're going to try to have less aviation transport because those things were non-essential, and we're going to focus on health, and we're going to focus on keeping people safe. And that is amazing. If we can focus on health and keeping people safe and happy, and well, then we'd be sorted. Unfortunately, there is a lot of talk from Fine Gael that we are going to go back to normal, and that really scares me a lot. The whole situation that we're in is very scary, but back to normal, we shouldn't be going back to anything. There are so many groups that were being oppressed by what's being now referred to as normal. And I think we've had a lot of exposure of the injustices within the meat industry. Like the pandemic itself, we've had so many realizations as to how that has been tied to animal agriculture and sale of animals and eating animals. And we need to learn something from this. We can't go back to something. We need to go forward to something, and something that does prioritize health and prioritize happiness over anything else.
Absolutely. I think like a big lesson after all of this is that we can't go back to the way it was, and that, you know, when faced with an emergency, anything and everything is possible. So, you know, climate change needs to be put up on that level. Animal rights does, human rights does, everything needs to be put on that pedestal of priority, and we need to deal with it. So yeah, I absolutely agree that like going back to normal, there can't be back to normal. It has to be something else. And I think that at the moment we have collectively a big opportunity for a change. So, you know, in the next couple of weeks, I think activists from around the country, we need to just make our presence felt while we can, before Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, and then possibly a sprinkling of the Green Party bring us back, you know, 20 years, you know.
Sorry, I love your description, a sprinkling of the Green Party. I just imagine a few like TDs and politicians as being like, let's jump on board with all this, which is looking like what's going to happen. Yeah,
it kind of does. It kind of does. So it's troubling to say the least, but I think now is the time for action, and I look forward to seeing what we can do in the next couple of weeks. But before I let you go, is there any last point you'd like to make, or any message you'd like to put out there?
I suppose just make your voice heard, whatever that voice is, whatever issue is your priority. If something is bugging you, and I'm pretty sure something is bugging everyone right now, make that known by the people who are in charge. And it's very easy to do that by finding out who your local representative is. If you don't have a local representative, make this known to the people around you and get them to speak on your behalf as well. Just try not to be silent, because silence is a frightening thing to do. Yeah,
well said, well said. Well, thanks so much, Evelyn, and I'll see you soon to the barricades, right?
To the barricades. Thanks, Laura.
Thanks, Evelyn.
Bye.